Though they found no proper ground for a death sentence, they asked Pilate to have him executed. Then, carrying his own cross, he went out to the place of the skull. A large number of people followed him. Including women who mourned and wailed for him. Dividing up his clothes, they cast lots to see what each would get. And they crucified him. My God, why have you forsaken me? He said, "It is finished." And he bowed his head and gave up his spirit.
Good evening, and thank you for participating in this Good Friday service. Good Friday is a strange observance in so many ways. Oddly, it's a time in which we seemingly celebrate death, celebrate a seeming defeat. It's odd that we call Good Friday good. Originally in the tradition of the church, it was Holy Friday or Great Friday or God's Friday. And yet in our time, it has become Good Friday, and to an outside observer, that seems a bit bizarre and odd. What is good about death? What gives us cause to, in a strange way, celebrate this particular moment in time, this particular moment in history? Jesus seemingly knew for some time before his death that he had to die. Jesus seemed to understand that death was a part of the plan. In our present day, looking back on the events of some 2,000 years ago, we often understand Jesus' understanding of the necessity of his death in terms of his recognition of his need to die for the predicament of the world, to die for humanity's sin as the Bible describes it. And often we can quickly resonate or understand Jesus' acceptance of his own death through the lens that Jesus knew he had to die in order to be the Savior of the world. All that is certainly true, but there's something more to Jesus' understanding of his own death. Jesus seemed to know that he had to die in order for God's purposes for his life to be fully accomplished and achieved. Jesus, the human, realized his life had to end for the new life that God was to grant him to come. Friday had to happen for the miracle of Sunday to occur. It's interesting to me that in all the services we do throughout the year, I often hear about how much people, is it okay to use the word enjoy the Good Friday service? I often hear how special and meaningful this service that, again, celebrates death is to people. And I've often wondered why this is so. Why is this service so significant and so special to many? And I'm starting to wonder, is it because all of us recognize something in the death of Jesus that leads to his new life, that resonates with our experience of things in life dying in order to yield or produce new life in our experience? The truth of life is that death surrounds us. Dreams die, relationships die, people die. And yet there's something in the experience and paradigm of Jesus' death and resurrection that reminds us that death is not final or fatal, but in some strange way, death is the entrance into the new life that God is creating. You might think about it like this. Do you remember 9th grade? You were both nervous and excited. You were leaving the middle school that you were so familiar with and the ruler of in 8th grade. You were entering a whole new world that was scary at first, but for many of us quickly became exciting. You were thrilled by the new life that high school brought. New relationships, new opportunities, an expanded world. It was a new day. It was a new reality. It was exciting. It was fresh. It was new and it was vibrant. Now do you remember your last few months of your senior year? Do you remember how stale it had all become? Do you remember how frustrating it started to seem? What was happening? The experience that was a reality in 9th grade had begun to die by the end of your senior year. And aren't you glad it did? Because if the 9th grade experience had lasted forever, you would have been forever in 9th grade. But life is this series of beginnings and endings, startings and stoppings, births and deaths. And in the experience of Jesus, we find this paradigm and experience embodied. Something dying, Jesus' very life, that will result in the resurrection life that God will bring to him on Easter Sunday morning. Maybe the reason we resonate so much with Good Friday is because we're always experiencing dimensions and moments of death in our own lives. And Good Friday helps us understand that somehow, like in the experience of Jesus, death is the beginning of new life. What is dying in your life right now? What is ending? Maybe it's a season of life that once brought you so much joy and fulfillment, but now it's coming to a close, slipping away, and you want to tenaciously hold on to it, and yet there's this deep sense that it's gone, that it's passing, that it's dying. Maybe it's a relationship that once brought you so much joy and so much fulfillment, but now there's a sense that the time for that relationship is passing, is ending. Maybe what's dying in your world right now is a view you had of reality, an understanding of how you thought the world should work and function, and you're realizing that perspective, that viewpoint, it no longer works for you anymore. And you're reluctantly letting it go, unsure of what's ahead, and yet in the experience of Jesus, you're reminded that death, as painful as it is, always results in new life. Maybe a dream has died. You've had to give up on that thing that gave you so much energy to face the future, and yet now you're faced with the realization that the dream is not going to happen, that the dream isn't even relevant anymore. Is there something about Good Friday and the loss of a dream that unites you with the suffering of Christ so that you can also be united with His resurrection? Isn't it true that life is a series of deaths, a series of endings? But through the eyes of faith, those endings open the door to new beginnings. The Easter miracle is certainly that Jesus dies to resolve the predicament of humanity, the sin of the world that separated us from God. But in His death, there is so much more. There's an identification with, an understanding of, an affirmation of that death is a part of life. That death opens the door for new life, both for us and for the thing that has died. Death opens the door for new life, both for us and for the thing that has died. It's the celebration of Good Friday about understanding the invitation in the person of Jesus. We are given to embrace the reality of death, to embrace the reality of endings, knowing that in so doing, we are opening the door for resurrection. We are opening the door for God's new life. That, my dear friends, that is the mystery and the hope of Easter. And that is why I think we call Friday good.